Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert, to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterwards he was hungry. And the tempter coming said to him, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. Who answered and said, It is written, Not in bread alone doth man live, but in every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him up into the holy city, and set him upon the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, that he hath given his angels charge over thee, and in their hands shall they bear thee up, lest perhaps thou dash thy feet against a stone. Jesus said to him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again the devil took him up into a very high mountain, and shewed him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and said to him, All these will I give thee, if falling down thou wilt adore me. Then Jesus saith to him, Begone, Satan, for it is written, The Lord thy God shalt thou adore, and him only shalt thou serve. And then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. So a number of you actually requested this, quite surprisingly. I think there were 2 or 3. I suspected that maybe overcoming pornography would be a greater request, but I was in fact wrong. So I've decided today to talk about overcoming obesity. For some context, using a lot of the advice here, I've lost about 30 to 35 pounds in about 3 months, right? But it's not about the number per se, it's about the attitude that you come at it with. So we're going to understand obesity first of all. Now, 95% of you here will not have a glandular problem. The problem that you probably have is that you're eating too many calories. Obviously, check this out with the doctor beforehand. You'll know if you have a glandular problem. For example, St. Thomas Aquinas was 300 pounds, probably because of a glandular problem, considering he was a monk. He was a man who followed all the fasts, and wrote rules towards fasting, in fact. Now, of this 95%, we can subdivide them into 2 reasons. It could be because in the past you've abused your appetite to the point where you eat too much regardless of being filled or not. I know that to an extent I had this because I was encouraged by members of my family and because of my own lack of self-control. But the second reason, which I think is probably more applicable to most people, considering most people don't eat to excess for the sake of eating to excess, this is probably also because you're eating the wrong things. Specifically too many carbohydrates, and therefore you're not getting filled. So you just eat and eat and eat the carbohydrates, and it deceives your appetite. So you may eat 1,500 calories of carbohydrates when you think you've only really eaten like 500 calories worth, right? Because carbs aren't that filling. And this applies to all forms. So we'll cover these 2 issues in that order. We'll first of all go through the appetite itself and mortifying that. And then secondly, we'll go through the attitudes towards what we're eating and how to look and dissect this problem. Because although strict diets have a place, they shouldn't be used purely to create the caloric deficit to drop the weight. They should be used to grow the virtue of temperance so that we keep the weight off. So first of all, let us address the appetite. So you may have abused your appetite to the point where your body cries out for more than you actually need. In fact, this is very common with these sorts of appetites. Often you'll cry out for more sex than you really need. You'll cry out for more anger than you really need. I know that the latter has been a problem for me. So, how you should start to restrain this appetite to natural levels, because you've almost certainly got it out of whack, is that you should pick 2 days a week to adopt a fasting rule. And don't worry, you're not going to cut out all food immediately. You're going to pick these 2 days so that you can focus on growing this particular virtue. So normally we'd choose Wednesday and Friday because those are the fasting days appointed in the Didache. And also, Friday is obviously the day that Christ was crucified. And so we don't eat meat anyway on that day. Or at least you shouldn't be. And what you should do is that you should start with the default fasting rule of the current Catholic Church. like earlier periods and with Eastern Orthodoxy, it's often more intense. But since we're aiming to grow this virtue from a position of being utterly lax, we should just start with this one. So, the general fasting rule for people post-Vatican II is 1 meal and 2 snacks not adding up to that meal a day. So, they obviously don't go nuts on this. It should just be a regular meal. So, for example, you might have a banana for breakfast, a sandwich and a packet of crisps for lunch, which would be your meal, and then for dinner you might have an apple. That would be an example of this default fasting rule. Obviously, do not abuse it and like load up your plate on the first meal, because, I mean, you'll just be full throughout the rest of the day. Like, just eat a regular meal, like 600 calories or so, and then the snacks should be around about 200 to 300 each. And you're going to swear to do this for 46 days, and make an oath on it. I'm going to link a video in the description specifically about this by the Ascent of Mount Carmel YouTube channel. Although I have problems with perhaps some of his attitude towards the hierarchy, he does make some very, very good content, so I'm going to link that in the description for you. And he describes precisely, he not only adds on to what is in this video, but he also describes how to go about swearing an oath to not eat. But one thing I would add to that is that you should reflect on it for quite a while. But you're gonna do this oath to keep this for exactly 46 days, because this is the length of Lent. It takes roughly 3 weeks to break a habit, and it takes another 3 weeks to build one. So you've got that, and roughly it's 46 days, so you're just allowing a little extra for each time. And then you go through this, you fast on the Wednesday and the Friday, and then when you reach the end of that, you change up the rule and you add another one. You make a rule for the next 46 days, but it will be just the one meal. So for lunch you may have a sandwich or something, a sandwich and crisps, but you won't have the apple and the banana on the Wednesdays and the Fridays. And then you go for another 46 days, and then you go one snack, and so on and so forth. The effect of this isn't to give like an absolutely austere mortification in order to offer it up to Jesus. This is the thing that I misunderstood about mortifying myself initially, and then when I spent a lot of time reading the Church Fathers and reading the Desert Fathers especially, I realised the point of them wasn't to, because they're purely austere and shocking in order to offer it up to God. This is why I wouldn't recommend people whip themselves with belts and with extension cables to overcome masturbation. The point is that you build that virtue in temperance, and the fact that you built the virtue means that you're less liable to sin. There is no level of sacrifice in your life that you can offer up which can in any way compare to giving up a single sin, be it venial or be it mortal. So just do it insofar as you need to overcome gluttony or masturbation or whatever. This is just general advice. So the second thing that we talked about was not knowing what to eat, because the majority of people in the modern era eat like crap. They eat loads of potatoes, they eat loads of bread, they eat loads of carbohydrates in general. Just because you don't eat chocolate a lot doesn't mean that you're eating healthily, because you're probably eating a lot of bread. I know I was eating tons. But we'll go into that in a second regarding the types of food, but you've probably got an idea of what I'm going to address. So first of all, what you should do in order to understand what is good to eat and what you should be eating is to use the calculator in the description to calculate your total daily energy expenditure. In order to lose weight, you should subtract about 500 calories from this. You should also be eating at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, so that would be 2.2 grams per kilo for Europeans and for everyone who's in a Yank. The second thing that we need to address, and this is a very, very detailed video, I think, or a very, very compacted video, so you should probably be taking notes, is these things called macronutrients. You'll often hear on TV people talking about omega-3, omega-6, calcium and such. These are micronutrients. You're not going to worry about these just now because, frankly, although they're very, very important, they are peanuts compared to this, and you'll get probably enough anyway. You can learn about balancing your calcium intake when you've gotten control over the macronutrients. So what are macronutrients? There are normally 3, but I'm going to include 4 principal macronutrients. There are carbohydrates, fat, and protein, which are the main 3, and then you've got alcohol, which is the 4th, which Sometimes people will include, sometimes they won't. I'll include it just for the benefit of the people here. So, carbohydrates, they are about 4 calories a gram. They don't really fill you, but they're very, very useful for fuel. So if you're going for a run, you're going to be doing an intense gym session, they're very, very useful. In fact, to the point where a lot of people recommend eating tons of carbohydrates before you go into the gym as a pre-workout. Then the second one is fat. It is 9 calories. It will fill you, unlike the carbohydrates, and it's also very potent fuel, but it requires a more intense means of, of the body using it. Like, I'm not some sort of nutritionist, I'm basically just going to give you the basics that I've learned. Protein is 4 calories a gram, and it will fill you, and it will build muscle. It is, as far as I understand, the one macronutrient which is absolutely essential to building you. The other ones can be ignored. You should definitely be eating them, obviously, but if you only had to choose one of them, you'd pick protein. And then finally, you have alcohol, which is 7 calories and is essentially useless. It often boosts the estrogen and lowers the testosterone of a man. I mean, you've all seen beer bellies. It's because people drink too much, and because alcohol is between essentially protein and fat in the level of calories it has, it's very easy to get fat off of it. It's generally not needed, and you should only be doing it socially. Only drink alcohol socially. And when you do that, you should keep it to moderation, really, obviously. And if you have problems with that, I can't really help you because I've never really had problems with it. I binge drink to certain points, but I was never addicted. So now you have this information down, you do not want to use it as a rough guide. I used it like that for a good year, and I actually ended up gaining weight. I ended up eating more than I should have. So I was eating 2,400 calories a day roughly when I should have been eating 1,900 at that time. And I'd often go above and below it because I wasn't planning it out. I just had the number down in my diary, and I'd try and hit it, and if I didn't, I wouldn't worry too much. What you should be doing is you should be going and organising what you're going to eat 6 days out of the week. And I'm going to link a video in the description from a guy called AthleanX, who is really, really good for lifting, but also has videos on dieting, specifically about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's diet. And I built mine off of that, or at least the one I was eating for about 2.5 months, and led to me losing about 30 pounds. You want to follow that 6 days a week, outside of obviously the fast days. Because if you have consistent, high protein, low fat content, food, if you eat really, really well consistently throughout the week and you have it all planned out, not only do you not fret over the quality of the food you're eating or what you're going to eat, you're also eating in a way that you know is healthy. So you can also prep your meals like this. So if I, for example, eat for dinner like 4 days out of the week about 8 ounces of fish and some vegetables, and I can just prepare that. I can just cut the vegetables beforehand and then stuff it and boil it, right? And you should do that as well. But like I say, look into that video in the description. I'm going to give some advice as well on particular forms of food to eat, because while everyone has their own tastes, not everyone always knows. Chicken breast is pretty much a universal good. Everyone should eat it at some level because it's very high protein and it's quite cheap. Likewise, eggs, whole milk, and whey protein are especially good for getting cheap protein. In fact, I'd say that whey protein is very good for anybody who's in the gym because you can pack a lot of protein into a very, very small space. And it's also deceptively cheap, because although it may cost about $100 to get a 5 kilo sack, or maybe $80, I'm not sure how much it costs in the States, it may cost that, but the thing is per serving you're only probably paying about 35 cents, whereas a chicken breast will cost maybe, $1. I don't know how the American systems work, so I'm doing this all in my head. Other things that I'd recommend eating is fibrous vegetables, particularly broccoli and asparagus. Asparagus has a high level of zinc, so it boosts your testosterone levels, and broccoli is known for being the kind of vegetable that really cleans you out. The same could go for things like pears and lamb as well. Those also cleanse the system very well because very, very few people are allergic to those particular things. So if you want to test allergies, there's a book called Deep Nutrition by Dr. Catherine Shandahan, I think her name is. I'll also link that in the description, where she goes through like all of this like choosing food kind of stuff in real deep detail as a 23-hour audiobook. And it's really good. So I'm going to recommend that, but just generally, if you stick to chicken breast, fibrous vegetables, brown rice, you eat eggs, whole milk and whey protein, you should generally be set. I mean, obviously vary out a bit, but those things are all good bets. I know this from experience. And as a side note, if you are fat, one of the best things you can do is go to the gym, because not only is it a very satisfying thing to be able to lift a big thing off of the ground and put it down, but also it improves your energy levels long term. Like, I've been terrible for the gym over the last 3 weeks because I'm moving out of where I am currently, as well as it getting really busy at certain times, so I can't use the weights area. So I have sort of laxed down on it, and it has had a notable effect on me in a negative sense. So get involved in the gym. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I'm saying look into the Athlean channel that I put in the description, and just, take notes. Also, just a reminder, I really would reflect on this video for a few days, come up with some guidelines, and then swear an oath on it. The Ascent of Mount Carmel video that I mentioned earlier on will help you out. So anyway, I hope this really helped. The next video I'm going to be doing, which will be out on Tuesday, I've now got a full written up schedule for not only the Patreon stuff, but also for the free videos, will be on the underestimation and the thorough utility of the Divine Mercy Chaplet, which is often attacked by trads, but in some cases I think it can be incredibly useful. Granted, it's a very specific use case, but I think that it's necessary to give it some defending since people are intent on attacking it. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope this helps you. Goodbye. Thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to continue to support this work and get access to dozens of hours of content, please subscribe to me on Patreon at patreon.com/renaissances. And if you'd like to join the community, there's a link in the description. Thank you.